Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Arena of the Pantheons, written by WritingDrakon. All right, please, monsieur. Humanity versus the Ing, a voice echoed out over the hubbub of the Colosseum. Dozens of gods, goddesses, and more of dozens of races filling the stands. Well, down in the Colosseum arena was a massive scrying pool, showing the Ing fleet making its way to Earth. On one side of the pool was him and his son, and on the other side sat Zar from the Ing. A simply decorated Ursa was settled in next to Hera, along with a strange mongoose-like creature next to a feminine Raska. The mongoose wearing what looked like armor, with long blades crossing their back, while the snake-like deity wore what looked like simple silks, hiding blades within them. "Are you certain humanity can shrug off what the Ing has prepared?" the mongoose-like creature said, glaring at Hera before looking at the pool. The Mongai had seen humanity, as was his job, judging for their sins, of which they had many. But they also had the capacity to love like no other, their pact bonds strengthening their allies. It was why he was remotely willing to ally with the strange, squishy creatures. Next to him, the Sand Mother hummed as she examined the Ing fleet, worried, her tail wrapped gently around the representation of the world. She knew that the fleet wasn't going towards her worlds, but she was a mother. Humanity had been willing to welcome them with open arms, and here they were, under attack. For her, it didn't feel right, leaving allies to fight on their own. Hera only smirked in her own way, and motioned to the very, very proud-looking series of forge and even war deities that humanity had, and a few others from other races, staring into similar scrying mirrors, like little compacts, really, each pointing at the mirrors of various things. Let's just say that the Ing are getting off lightly. I've seen what made that bunch so proud, and believe me, if the Ing gets the attention of those creations, someone is losing a world, she said with amusement, before the lights began darkening, and Ares, standing on the stone disk, floated up above the scrying pool in the middle of it all, grinning like mad. "All right, everybody," his voice said, booming out over the now silent Colosseum. "Today we have one hell of a fight. For the visitors, we have the Ing, and there's Zar," Ares said, with a column of light illuminating Ing Zar, making the spherical creature seem to puff up in its version of finery, wearing a lattice adorned with gemstones and otherworldly beauty. "And for the defending champions, we have humanity and their Pantheons," he said, giving a bow, as columns of light dotted the crowd, revealing dozens of deities, making the Ing Zar bulk, realizing just how many there were and how varied they were. "Hope you placed your bets because we are about to be ready to rumble!" he roared, even as before the Ing fleet, space-time tore apart, as a large old ring-shaped vessel pushed out of the wall space, its soul snarling viciously, cannons dotting its outer ring aiming at the fleet before it. The entire vessel the size of Ohio, or Germany, with a massive rotary cannon at its center. "And coming out of the human sector, looks like humanity sent a full supercarrier. Why is it called a supercarrier, you ask?" Ares said, as the ship's engines on her rim glowed, spinning her up as her sides opened up, and large vessels flew out, their bows aimed forward at the Ing fleet, but drifted out further, making room for more vessels to leave, like some kind of metal sprinkler or a many-armed spiral. The ships coming out of the massive vessel were not fighters either. Smaller carriers, dreadnoughts, destroyers flowed out of her, drifting away before igniting their impulse drives, screaming forward at the Ing fleet from above, below, and the sides, like some sort of flower closing around a hostile fleet. PT ships were spat out, little dots in the stars, but far faster, streaking forward with newly launched fighters like lethal dust, already releasing missiles, adding to the show as they met the Ing fleet head-to-head. "Coming out swinging, humanity's released a small eradication fleet on the Ing. Let's see how the visitors handle this small rapid attack force," Ares said, as the Colosseum roared, like it was some kind of ball game, watching as the human vessels charged in, some slowing and weeding to the side, opening fire with ruthless broadsides, while Rock's artillery ships that were a part of the fleet, and one of humanity's sibling species, hung back, ships rocking as they fired out massive shells into the midst of the Ing fleet, detonating and adding to the chaos. Hanging back, the massive ring ship opened fire with the outer rim cannons on it, each strike pummeling into the hostile fleet, trying to bore its way to the enemy flagship, each shot shredding a smaller vessel in its way. Looks like the visitors are having a little trouble. What's the matter? Didn't think that humanity wouldn't be willing to kick that little ass. Ares taunted as the Ing fleet quickly formed up, the ships linking together in an attempt to form a literal cube of vessels, like some kind of ablative armor around the flagship, shifting to cover the new holes that were punched in them. From this position, the Ing vessel opened fire, spitting out electromagnetic waves that normally would have disabled whole ships, only to splash against the trike shield vessels as they pushed up, their flat shield emitters at their fronts glowing as they formed a series of nodes, their shields meshing together and forming one large barricade. Looks like we got a battle of the shields here, folks, literally using your own forces as a meat shield versus energy mesh. Who's gonna counter first? Ares said, hyped up and hyper as the human vessels formed a channel between them and the Hellworld carrier, its rotary cannon spinning up rapidly as its impulse engines glowed. Massive rounds were fired, forcing the ship back, counteracting the impulse drive's thrust. The massive and numerous rounds striking the phalanx around the Ing motherships harshly, the heavy slugs crushing the thinner hulled ships with each strike, while HE rounds detonated, ripping apart the enemy vessels that formed around and over the hulls, tearing the enemy vessels as the PT ships got to work, flooding the stars with their torpedoes, breaking off as the warhead screamed at the phalanx, detonating and scattering them. The broadside still continued, the human vessels against the shield wall, firing over and over, making a micrometeor storm of metal interspersed with rocks-heavy shells, tearing more chunks from the phalanx. Eventually it broke apart, revealing a flagship had been charging up a massive cannon, now extended out of the hull, aimed at the defending fleet. Looks like the visitors had an ace up their sleeves. Took some time to charge up before they could fire it. Wonder what the defenders have in. Oh, are you kidding me? Ares said, voice changing to shock as the PT ship dove into the line of fire of the cannon, and dove down its core, sparking dangerously. Moments later, the cannon detonated, violently, scattering the remainder of enemy fleet away, even as the flagship tried to fold up the main cannon. Don't count that ship amongst the dead, folks. They'll be back soon enough. In the meantime, watch where you sleep. That's one mean little bugger, and isn't about biting you in the ankles while you try to get your 1,000-year shut-eye. Several deities in the audience grimaced, as the rumbling chuckle was heard behind Hera. An eldritch personification of the ship's spall faded in, her crew settling into chairs around them, groaning. Of course our fights are Ares' pay-per-view. Why wouldn't it? One crewman joked with a chuckle, accepting the popcorn, now that his memories in the afterlife were unlocked again. How much do you want to bet he's recording Project Ghidorah's fights to scare some poor idiot? Another said, getting a snort of the ship's captain. No bet, ensign. He's been hyped about that surprise since Hephaestus and Ptah, the captain said with an amused snort. The fight's not over yet! Round 2, start! Ares shouted, grinning wildly as both fleets clashed again, both sides losing ships, this time as the Ling vessels attempted similar kamikaze runs, only to discover that their opponents used various armors more durable than their own, and only disabled them. Boarding crews were not successful either. Blast doors would slam shut on them, literally cutting their boarding crews in half or cracking them like eggs. Crews would hunker behind bulkheads and take turns seeing who could score the most kills. Medical bays constantly spat back out previously killed soldiers and crew, grinning madly, grabbing their fallen weapons and charging without armor, buying time for others to grab armor and heavier guns. Ships dead in the water didn't lay idle, using their cannons like thrusters, launching themselves at the enemy fleet, close enough to self-destruct, or to allow their vessels to rip their own cables out, and use them like weapons to tear into the Ing ships, or bombarding from afar. Some ships who lost their weapons connected to those who still had some guns but no engines, forming hulks, working together like some sort of Frankenstein monster, remaining in flight and bore down on the Ing, lurching and snarling, shrugging off round after round, smashing into the smaller enemy ships, sending them flying as the other ships kept up the barrage. "Ah, yes, good old tenacity!" came Ares' booming voice, smirking wider as everyone watched the fleet decimating their opponent, demoralizing them, as every ship they disabled only joined a hulk. Even if they killed a ship, that ship took out large chunks of them with them, leaving scorched, shattered hulls behind. Just because you shot their engines doesn't mean that they won't use their own weapons like a deadly propulsion system, like a mini Orion drive, minus the deadly nuclear rounds. The Allied forces began to swarm around the Ing fleet, seeking to cut off any and all escape for them. Broadsides still sweeping swaths of ink vessels aside, as fragments, ripping holes or leaving them completely dead as they detonated in their power cores. Trike vessels now were pushing up, paired up with human and rocks vessels, gathering up ink vessels, shields being shaped into a long barrel before the human and rock ships fired high-yield explosives in, watching in amusement as the explosive acted like a gunpowder charge, literally shotgunning the ink vessels back to their own fleet, conserving ammunition and watching as their own vessels ping-ponged with one another, causing more detonations. Oh, now that's gotta be painful to the ego! Shot with your own ships! Ha! Literally! Ares laughed, smirking wildly as he watched the trike vessel form its shield into a cone around its front and ignite its engines, burning forward like some kind of oversized javelin, ripping through enemy vessels, with a human vessel behind him, side cannons flaring with weapons fire, punching larger holes, allowing more ships in to fill the spots, as Rock's vessels shelled from the newly established areas within the blitzkrieged area. Not to be outdone, the Vol supercarrier opened fire again, bays on its front opening to reveal missiles, massive, angry swarms, ranging from continent glaciers to ship destroyers shrieked out, weaving in and out of enemy ships, striking true, raising its own fleet in fire, which they calmly flew out of, no worse for wear, even as the Ing panicked, trying to fall back. The Ing flagship looked like it had seen better days, pockmarked with holes, missing vital systems, and venting atmosphere. It was clear that they wouldn't last if the human fleet got through their once innumerous, smaller vessels. Without warning, the Ing flagship turned tail and ran, accompanied by a few of the other larger vessels, leaving their smaller forces to deal with the very, very pissed-off eradication fleet, still crushing them between their jaws, now able to focus solely on the smaller fleet, without needing to worry about the larger vessels. Well, now, looks like somebody forgot they left the stove on. Oh, wait. They didn't. Just the Bob having fun playing with their station. Let's go take a peek, shall we? End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.